Glad you could join us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Our world is warming and the impact is felt everywhere, with a growing evidence of a link between extreme weather and man-induced climate change on one hand, and on the other is the impact of violence and armed conflicts. Agriculture is one of the hardest hit sectors, and this in turn is set to negatively affect food production. Today we open Earthfile with a story from the northeast of Nigeria, where many are in need of food. Do stay with us. Nigeria's northeast has for decades been dominated by agricultural industry and subsistence farming. In the past 4 years, the insurgency by Boko Haram has exacerbated problems in the region, leaving it further impoverished and facing a severe lack of food. The insecurity has left many farmers unable to plant or harvest their crops. In Borno State, 5.8 million people are estimated to face extreme food and nutrition deficits, a figure that has doubled in the past year.
Severely food insecure, if you want, is a technical term that we get from the World Food Programme and from the Food and Agriculture Organization. What it really means is that people are living on the edge. They are surviving on, if they can, one meal a day.
According to the United Nations Children's Fund in Nigeria, the international community has failed to grasp the seriousness of the need for financial support in the region. Around 1.8 million people are internally displaced, with most living in accommodating but increasingly populated host communities. In the heat, some mothers feed water to their babies below the age of 6 months, which has increased malnutrition, especially in areas where water purity is low. UNICEF says that the campaigns have been very effective in explaining to women that feeding infants exclusively with breast milk is the best way to prevent malnutrition.
A severely malnourished child is up to 9 times more likely to die of diseases like measles or malaria or cholera than a healthy child.
It is estimated that 70 million people across 45 countries will face acute food insecurity and will require emergency food assistance this year. Food insecurity in 2017 will be driven primarily by 3 factors. Most importantly, persistent conflict is disrupting livelihoods, limiting trade and restricting humanitarian access across many regions, including the Lake Chad Basin, the Central African Republic, Sudan, and the Great Lake region. A second important driver is drought, especially those driven by 2015 and 2016 El Nino, as well as the 2016 and 2017 La Nina. And finally, economic instability related to conflict, a decline in foreign reserves due to low global commodity prices and associated currency depreciation have contributed to very high staple food prices in Nigeria and some other countries. 2017 marks the second consecutive year of extreme large needs, with the size of the acutely food insecure population roughly 40% higher than 2015. In addition to the sheer size of food insecure population, a persistent lack of access to adequate food and income over the past 3 years has left households in the worst affected countries with little ability to manage future shocks. The Farming Early Warning Systems Network, which is run by the United States government, says evidence suggests that famine occurred in 2016 and could be ongoing in the Lake Chad Basin region.
The situation is catastrophic. We estimate nearly 1.4 million children in Nigeria, Somalia, Yemen, and South Sudan, where famine was just declared, to be severely malnourished and at imminent risk of death.
The situation in the Lake Chad Basin had recently prompted a visit by the members of the United Nations Security Council. The council members, led by the United Kingdom ambassador to the United Nations, visited the internally displaced people's camp at the Teacher village in Maiduguri in hard-hit Borno State in the northeastern part of Nigeria. About half of the displaced persons living in the camp are children, with 379 of them infants. The council members joined a circle of survivors, many of whom were women whose husbands and children were killed by Boko Haram and who are struggling to feed themselves and the remnants of families that they have left.
We have had some very moving experiences in one of the camps for internally displaced people, meeting women and men who have been victims of Boko Haram and who are now victims of the humanitarian crisis. The numbers are shocking in terms of the numbers displaced, 500,000 children in severe acute malnutrition, and we are determined that the international community, the donors and the United Nations as the coordinator should step up response before it is too late. We are also convinced that the long-term solution to these problems is not military, it's not even humanitarian, it's development. It's thinking about the long term, it's putting the investment in, it's thinking about education, thinking about jobs, thinking about protection of civilians, thinking about rights, human rights, women and girls' rights in particular. All of that has got to come together, and we stand with the government of Borno and the government of Nigeria and the neighbours in tackling all of these scourges in the Lake Chad Basin.
Some 14 million people are affected by Boko Haram, with 8.5 million in urgent need of humanitarian aid.
The crisis in the Lake Chad Basin was probably the biggest complex humanitarian emergency crisis that had not been addressed suitably. And a group of us in August of 2016 went to the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and asked for a massive scaling up of the efforts here. So here we are in March 2017 on the ground in the Lake Chad Basin countries to see how the efforts on the humanitarian side and on the military and security side are underway and how things are going. And I have to say that the issues of access for the humanitarian agencies to reach the people in need, the internally displaced populations, especially the vulnerable women and children, remain a concern because, of course, some of the military operations are making it very difficult for the humanitarian agencies and their implementing partners to reach these vulnerable populations. So we continue to focus on access to these people in need. We also continue to focus on protection issues. We spoke with a number of female internally displaced women and girls, as well as some of the men and boys at the Teachers College camp today. And what struck us was that although they are in a secure situation at the college, some 70% of the IDPs are not in the camps. They are located within host communities, but some, especially women and girls who might have to go gather firewood or go out and seek food in addition to the rations being supplied by the humanitarian agencies, are still at risk protection-wise, and they may be at risk, sadly, of sex and gender-based violence. So those two issues of access and protection remain very much on our mind.
Following their visit to the region, the Security Council members on the 31st of March 2017 adopted a resolution strongly condemning all terrorist attacks, violations of international humanitarian law and abuses of human rights by Boko Haram and ISIL. The resolution, adopted unanimously, reiterates the Council's call on member states to move vigorously and decisively to cut the flows of funds and other financial assets and economic resources to individuals, groups, undertakings, and entities on the ISIL and Al-Qaeda sanctions list, including Boko Haram.